Okay, this video is going to cover dimensioning, and we're also going to set up the dimension styles in the AutoCAD. So we'll kind of combine that at one time. I think we can do this to show you the general rules for dimensioning, and then also show you how to set them up in Autodesk in AutoCAD. Now, one thing that the dimension standard talks about is that we only need 2 decimal places to the right when we put a dimension in. So a drawing that has a dimension like 0.7500, we can change that to 0.75. Also, for instance, this 0.375 right here, we could change that to 0.375 instead of 0.3750. So we only need 2 decimal places to the right. Down here towards the lower portion of this drawing, we could make that 1 inch 1.00, and we would be fine. So what we'll do then is we'll go ahead and set up our dimensioning standard. Now, one thing we can do is note that we would go ahead and go on to the dimension style or dimension layer and make that the current layer. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see that, so it does come out. Okay, then we're going to now next thing we'll do is we'll go to the Annotate tab. That'll put us on the ribbon we need for dimensions, and I'm going to have to expand this out a little bit more again. We'll be dealing with the dimensioning commands in this area right here of the ribbon, and to set up the dimension styles, we just hit this little arrow that points down and to the right, and we can hit that, and it brings up a dialog box that will allow us to either manipulate the standard dimension style, or we can create a new one if we choose to, and we may do that here in just a little bit. In fact, if we go to the modify, then it brings up another dialog box, and this dialog box shows us what the standard dimensioning is. In fact, I think I'll just leave that where it's at, and we'll create a new one, and we'll call it let's just, you can name up your name if you want. Whatever you want, it doesn't really matter. We'll start with the standard, and we'll use it for all dimensions, and we'll make it annotative, and we'll continue. And as you note, it comes up basically looking the same. The reason I want to make this different, I'm going to change all these by block to by layer. So the color of the dimensions, the dimension lines now, and note, the dimension lines are showing here now in yellow. They were white. So as they change, we can see what's going on there. You will have to know that for a quiz. So the dimension lines, you can see, are parallel to the 2 points that you defined in your drawing. So they're parallel to the 2 points that you defined on the object. The line type will be by layer. The line weight will also be by layer. Now, you can suppress dimension lines, and watch what happens here on the drawing. If we suppress the first one, one goes away, or if we suppress the second one. And what first and second means is the first point that I pick. So if I pick this point first, this dimension line is going to be suppressed. If I picked this line second, then, or excuse me, this point second, then this line is going to go away. And you can have both of them go away anytime you want. Sometimes you may need that. We don't need that in the standard, but maybe we might want to change one somewhere within the field of the drawing. Okay, so now then we look at the extension lines, and the extension lines, if you watch what happens here, it's these lines right here that are going to change. In fact, I'm going to change them to red first. So there's the extension lines, but we want them by layer. The line type for the extensions, and that's extension 1 and 2, so which is similar to what the suppression was. First or second, depending on where you picked, and the line weight will be by layer as well. We don't need to suppress the extension lines in this case. Back in the old days we did, because it would print extension lines for every dimension you put on, and some of them would overlap. Extend beyond the dimension lines. Now that number right there is the distance from this point here to that point right there. I don't know if we change that, if it'll show up on there. I've never tried that. Yes, it does. So 0.156 would probably be enough. Then the offset from the origin is the distance from the object to the extension line. You do have to have an offset there, and I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. So there's your offset. The suggested value on that will be 0.1. Actually, it's a 1/16 of an inch, but when you do a 1/16, a lot of times in a CAD drawing, you won't actually see that gap, and that can be a problem. We don't need fixed length extension lines, and we're good with that. So then we can move on to the symbols. Now the arrowheads, you have a variety there, to say the least. Typically we would deal with closed blank, and note when you hit the first one the others go with it. Closed with a line through it. Let's see, we got open. Okay, and you can see those changing over here. And then origin indicator, that again would be dependent upon where you picked your first point. Now there's origin indicator 2. Right angle, no. Open 30, that would be acceptable, but typically we use the closed blank or the closed filled. The only difference between these two would be closed blank. Believe it or not, you wouldn't use as much ink on a rather large drawing. Closed blank, and we'll make the leader. Now the leader is this area right here. So if we change that, it's not going to show up, but that would be for like notes and such. The arrowhead size, based on the ASME standard, should be 0.18, and it's going to be 3 times as long as it is wide. So it'll be 0.18 long, and it'll be 0.06 wide. Center marks, we'll set that to none. Okay, now, and what happens there, it goes away, or you can have a center mark, or you can have a center mark with a line. Okay, so, and we may have to come back and switch that back to line, but I think for now we want that at none. Dimension break is the distance in here from the text to the dimension line. We'll leave that at 1/8. The rest of these are okay. We're good on that. We'll say text. Now on the text, you only have the standard annotative, but we want to go ahead and set up our own style. So we'll pick, again, sorry about that. We'll pick this area right here, and notice the 3 dots or the ellipses will bring up another dialog box. Now we've got Arial, and it doesn't much matter. We can use different styles. It depends on what you want. I think we might, on my drawings I use Tahoma, but Times New Roman, and if you just type in a T, it'll go to the first T. Tahoma is one style, and when you pick that, it should update. So you can see different types. There's Times New Roman, but I'm going to go with, I like Tahoma, or Technique maybe, Technic. Tahoma's a little bit more bold. And the text style, you can have bold or just a regular style. I think regular is fine. Size, annotative, okay. And notice that's for the paper text height. And if you change this text height, it will automatically be that text height. If you leave it at 0, then you can change it within the field of the dimensions. So we'll leave that alone. You can put the text upside down. You can put it backwards. You can put it upside down backwards. But we don't need that. The width factor, normally you would make that 0.8. That's 80% as wide as it is tall. And you can see that change there. Then on the oblique angle, normally I leave that at 0, but you can put that, I think you can go up to 5 degrees based on the standard. So that this gives you a little flare there if you like flare, but the only thing I would say there is make sure that all of your text is the same, no matter what you use. And we'll set that to the current and close that. So that's now our standard. We'll change the text color to by layer. You can see that comes up. Fill color, we don't need a fill color. The text height, 0.18 is fine. Normally on up to a D-size drawing, I think it's 0.156, but a little bit bigger won't hurt. Let's see, we don't need to draw a frame around the text. That'll be taken care of when it needs to be at other locations. And you can have text placement vertical centered or horizontal centered, and you've got some different options there. But centered is the one we want. View direction left to right, and right to left I think is actually for another standard. Offset from the dimension line, that's in this case 90 thousandths. If we make that 0.2, watch what happens. Okay, so this widens it out here a little bit, but obviously we don't want that. 0.1 maybe ought to be enough, and that'll clean things up for us. We want the text to be horizontally lined as opposed to aligned with the dimension. So this is aligned text, and this is just unidirectional. Unidirectional means it's all read from one direction. Aligned means it's going to align with the dimension line, no matter where the dimension line is. So we want this. The fit, we really don't need to change anything here. The fit is just going to allow it to fit within the confines of the dimension line, or excuse me, extension lines. We really don't need to change anything there. Primary units, we are using decimal here as opposed to engineering, architectural, or otherwise. So we'll leave that alone. The precision is how many places to the right of the decimal do you want to show. Now normally I set that at 3, and there you can see the change. And then if I have to change it to 2, I'll change it to 2. And in the case of our drawing we're doing over here, that would absolutely be the case. So round off 4 decimal places. You can make that go higher or lower. I believe it'll round off to about, I think it's around 16 decimal places. If you need to put something out in front of all of your text, then you could type it in here, and it would show up on your dimensions. And it's out. Prefix is in front, suffix would be at the end. Obviously we don't need that. And again, if we do have to have that, we'll put it in as we see fit within the different, like on this drawing over here, we'll put it on this one by itself and this one by itself, and I'll show you how to do that. The measurement scale, we'll keep that at single spacing. We probably won't have any need to change that. If we had created the drawing at half scale, then we might want to go in here and change this to actually 2:1. That would bump the numbers up to where they would be the right size. So you can draw something half scale and then go ahead and dimension it properly with full scale dimensions. Suppress the leading zeros or trailing zeros. If you click on that, it's going to suppress any zeros that are out in front, like this area right here. Okay, and that is one that we use on the SME standard. Now the trailing, that would suppress any that would come after the dimension. So 1960, the 0 would be gone. We normally don't have to do that. We'll do that with the precision. The angle units, we use decimal degrees. The precision on that can be at 0. We don't need to see 60.00. Typically you just leave that at 0. And then suppress the leading zeros on that. Would be good. Alternate units. We can turn on alternate units, and we would have the millimeter, and that's determined right here. This is the millimeter factor. If it was 2.54, then it would be in centimeters. And there's the precision. But we really don't need to have that on for what we're doing. But you can have that if you have to. Tolerances, right now there are none, but we can have what's called symmetrical. Okay, and this symmetrical means that it's going to have the same range above or below your target number. We can also have deviation, and deviation means that you'll have a different target number above and below for your target, so your range can differ. You can have 0 here and plus 10 thousandths here, and in other words, it couldn't get any smaller than that, but it could get larger. And then we've got limits, which just shows both numbers. And notice our upper and lower values change depending upon which one of these we use, and these are the values we would put in there. So if we made that 0.10, notice that changed that number by 10 thousandths. Let's go back and look at symmetrical. Note symmetrical, it's going to be, you only have to deal with one because it's only giving you one option. So there you can see plus or minus 10 thousandths. Deviation, we talked about the fact that, if you put 10 thousandths in there, the top one's going to be 10, the bottom one, you could actually make that something like 30 if you wanted. I mean, it can vary. Okay, so that's depending upon the design, but we have those options in the deviations. We talked about the limits, and then the last one is the basic. And basic is used with geometric dimensioning and tolerancing. That's all you'll need to know for that right now. The tolerance value for this number is located differently. Right now we'll set it at none. We don't have any tolerances on these drawings. And the position would be in the middle. And there's really nothing to do here because we've got it set at none. But if you did have symmetrical, then you would probably want to suppress the leading zeros on both the angular dimension, or well, we don't have any alternate, but you would want to suppress that. That's all of the dimensioning styles for my dimension style. So we hit OK, and then I want to click on that and make sure I set that to the current, and then close. So now when I put any dimensions in, they're going to be the annotation scale 1 to 1 will be fine. When we put in a dimension now, it's going to have my characteristics that I wanted. So that's going to be the key. And I guess let's look at that just 1 second here. There's mine. Okay, now let's go back and reset this to the standard and put that same dimension in. Okay, and not a lot of difference, but you see I've got 4 decimal places here. I've only got 3 here. Okay, that's all we'll talk about on this video. I just wanted to get that standard defined for you and some of the dimensioning rules.